Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
I wanted to take a big picture look at what did World War II look like from the Black perspective.
We're not only exercising, we have fun.
It's such an old city, and it had such a big part of American history.
Today on Spotlight, celebrating a civil rights pioneer who offers powerful advice and words of wisdom. Plus, seniors fight the wintertime blues with fitness that strengthens their bodies and minds. And then a tour of some St. Louis history that you might not know about. But first, a distinguished professor tells the real story of over 1 million Black Americans who served in World War II. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
The official start of the U.S. involvement in World War II against the Axis powers was after the attack on the naval fleet at Pearl Harbor by the Empire of Japan in December of 1941. When images of that time of war are conjured, the pictures of the greatest generation are most likely to come to mind. Troops storming the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, or the raising of the American flag at Iwo Jima. But those snapshots are just that, curated moments in time. They don't fully represent the breadth of the kinds of people who wore military uniforms back then. First off, all of the faces that come to the minds of most are probably white faces. But it turns out that that is not only inaccurate, but it's a deliberate mistelling of the history. Not only did the military service include Black Americans, but they served in racially segregated regiments that had to fight the powers on the home front to be able to fight the war abroad. Distinguished Professor of History at Dartmouth College, Dr. Matthew Delmont, has researched and penned his fifth book, Half American. There, he brings to light the purposely hidden history of much of the Black American struggle at home for the opportunity to fully participate in the Second World War, the struggle while prosecuting that same war, and how that two-front fight led to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s in the United States.
Half American, the title of the book, actually comes from a letter. It was written by a gentleman named James Thompson, who was a 26-year-old from Wichita, Kansas. He wrote a letter to a Black newspaper called the Pittsburgh Courier, in which he asked, should I give my life to live half American? And he went on to ask a number of other questions. This was December 1941, after Pearl Harbor. He was on the verge of being drafted. And he really wanted to know, what does it mean for me as a Black man to potentially be drafted in an army that's segregated and potentially die fighting for a country in which I'll come back and not be a full citizen? That letter helped to launch the Double Victory campaign through the Pittsburgh Courier to secure victory over fascism abroad and victory over racism at home. Double Victory was really the rallying cry for Black Americans during the war. And those words from Thompson's letter, should I give my life to live half American, they really stuck with me as I worked on this book for the past several years, in part because a lot of what he was asking in 1940 still, I think, resonates today. And
why did you end up writing this book?
Several years ago, I was looking at oral history interviews. There's one of a gentleman named Robert P. Madison, who's a Black veteran. This interview was done by the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. Robert P. Madison served in the Army. He was in Italy, earned a Purple Heart for his role in combat. After the war, he went on to earn architectural degrees from Case Western from Harvard and became a trailblazing architect. He designed the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, among other buildings. But the part of his oral history interview that stuck with me is he described a trip to a bookstore. At this point, he's in his 80s. He's late in his life. And he said he was looking at the section of books on World War II, and he flipped through it. He found these great big books, and he couldn't find anything at all about Black soldiers or Black airmen. He said we were a forgotten group of people. It was reminiscences like that really led me to want to write this book. That I know as a teacher that we have parts of our textbooks that are about the Double Victory campaign that will talk about the African-American experience in World War II in small parts. But I knew there had to be a larger story there. And so I wanted to take a big picture look at what did World War II look like from the Black perspective. And so over the course of 6 or 7 years, I've been working on this book. And what I'm most proud of is trying to weave together these various stories, both what was going on the various war fronts of the war, the vital roles that Black troops were playing, but also what was going on the home front. I think too often we tell those stories as two separate stories, but for Black Americans, these were two parts of the same battle. It was really the Double Victory campaign to defeat fascism abroad and defeat racism at home. One thing I hope my book does is bring these stories, these important stories, back to the foreground.
To hear more stories about Black American soldiers in World War II, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Don't think of the Civil Rights Movement and Black History Month as something outside of you. My dear friend, Black History Month merely brings up an issue that is your issue as well. Are you equal? This equality, your own place in life, and it is the place that you're expected to maintain throughout your life, through adulthood. Knowing who you are, what you've come to contribute, and what you have a right to, and what you have a right to contribute is the most important gift you have in your life.
Perhaps no one better understands that gift than Dr. Melba Patillo Beals. At the age of 15, this trailblazer was one of 9 African-American students chosen to integrate the all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas.
I wanted the resources it offered me because the students from that school went to the top universities in the world.
But her hopes of attending Central High School were met with oppression and terror.
First day I went to Central High School, it was an incredible mob, so there was ugliness there.
Multiple attempts to safely enter the school and stay in classes were unsuccessful, due in part by the illegal segregation orders by Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus. First, the Arkansas National Guard prevented the students from entering Central High. Violent racists traveled in from the south to Little Rock to stop the integration at all costs. Then the local police were overpowered by the growing mob of hateful protesters. The escalating violence took an emotional toll not only on the students, but their parents as well.
Yes, they suffered terribly. They made a sacrifice. They worried about us daily. Sometimes they had to come to school and they risked their own lives.
Little Rock was out of control and in crisis, a true state of emergency. President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to restore order and ensure the safety of the students. The armed soldiers drove the Little Rock Nine to and from Central High and escorted them through the protesting crowds and into Central High School. This was a welcome reprieve for the parents, so much so they jointly sent a telegram to the White House to thank the president. But for the students, troubles continued inside the school, despite the presence of the soldiers who escorted them to their classrooms and stood guard outside the classroom door. The white students who were friendly to the black students were also met with hostility from others.
There were people in there who had souls and who would have done it differently, but whenever they tried to do it differently, they too were threatened and mistreated.
So how did this 15-year-old find her way to endure the heartbreaking persecution? She received life-changing words of wisdom from someone who related completely to her struggle. It was Dr. Martin Luther King.
I met him a couple of times, and on the first time I met him in Mrs. Bates' basement, all 9 were sitting there, and I was just whine. And he said, Melba, you are not doing this for yourself. Don't be selfish. You're doing this for generations yet unborn.
To fight her fears, young Melba received spiritual guidance from her grandmother.
From the very beginning of my life, I was taught the Bible, made to repeat Bible verses, always told that God is with me.
The teen recorded her fears and pleas to God in her daily journal. Decades later, Dr. Melba Patillo Beals included many of those journal entries in her best-selling book, Warriors Don't Cry.
That is a book which tells you what happened in Central High School once I was inside, day by day. And it explains to you the process one goes through in one's head. You know, as a child, certainly you don't think of death or attack or any of that as being something that is in your face now. And what that did was to teach me that it is in your face now. And it really made me alert and gave me strength that I exhibit today.
Her first-person historical account from Warriors Don't Cry became a part of the social studies curriculum for middle and high schools around the country. It also launched a healing journey for Dr. Beals.
God has brought me a long, long way and kept all the promises that my grandmother made on his behalf. She said, be patient. God is with you, and he sees your need. And so I see that equality that I hoped for and prayed for and begged for.
To explore more civil rights-related videos for your classroom, check out our educational website, educate.today. Use the keyword civil rights.
They are the best-selling authors and all of your favorite genres. For in-depth, one-on-one interviews, go to hecmedia.org.
Health and fitness goals top the list for New Year's resolutions. And for this group of St. Louis area seniors, the commitment is real. It began long before 2023.
I think I've been here probably 5 or 7 years. I started here 13 years ago.
I've actually started about 2008 or 2009.
They are in a strength, stretch, and balance class for seniors. It's one of several classes offered at Mercy Hospital South.
I think getting in the door is the hardest thing that you can do, because people will sign up for classes, and this has happened multiple times, and they won't come.
Once they do,
it takes effort. Some mornings you feel terrible, but once you get going in your groove, it's not that difficult.
The reasons for joining vary.
Keeps me moving. I probably would be in a wheelchair if I wasn't coming here.
I had a little bout with depression, and when I got through all the counseling, they suggested that I come and do these. Started here doing Tai Chi, and it kind of evolved and now into Gene's fitness class. I've developed neuropathy in my legs. So the doctors tell me they can't fix the neuropathy, but you can strengthen your muscles in your legs.
I have arthritis real bad, so that is my main reason for coming. My husband had just passed away, and I thought it'd be good to get out and be with people, and it was hard, but I'm so glad I did.
While the reasons differ, the goals are about the same.
People over 65, 1/4 of the seniors, they fall every year. And it's the top reason why people die over that age or are injured. So that's what we're trying to stop right now. And we're trying to strengthen their bodies, especially their core muscles, in order to keep them healthy and standing on both feet. You have to be able to support yourself, so we work on exercises where you actually have to be strong enough in the core to catch yourself if you start to fall. So that's why we strengthen the body and use your arms and your hands in case you do fall.
And there's one more thing that just happens.
We have so much fun in here. We have a lot of fun.
What they learn here even helps them set goals at home.
I try to do some of the things we do in class at home, like stretching and things with your feet.
Move your feet, move your bodies, get up and walk, not just to the kitchen, and just get up and walk like every 20 minutes.
Some have an even deeper motivation that keeps them coming every week.
I'm 84. And it'd be easy for me just to sit down with these legs and quit, but I don't want to do that. You'll just fade away.
I love Jean. She's a wonderful instructor.
Some of it is the people because, during the week, most all of my friends are dead. They're either dead or they live out of town. So these are my friends.
This is why they encourage other seniors to fulfill a fitness New Year's resolution. New faces would be welcomed.
It amazes me that there's not more men in this class.
And it helps fight wintertime blues.
The winter and these type days that we're having is, I think you should set a goal. I do a Tuesday and Thursday class, and in both classes there's a very good bunch of people that you can meet, socialize with, and that helps a lot too.
Socializing is a big part of this class.
It's a great group of gals. I mean, we're not only exercising, we have fun.
What about Leo?
Oh, he's a riot. Leo's wonderful. He fits right in with us.
I've been the only man in this class for a few years now.
Which goes back to the point.
I just need to tell them get off their butt and get out and do it.
And the new year may be a perfect time.
It'll keep you healthy and happy. We have a different attitude when you're with people. It's great.
The history of St. Louis fashion, later on Spotlight.
We're in a time period right now where we are looking at the complexities of stories and the complexities of the world we live in right now, and you can't truly understand them until you go to that historic community, interact, engage in different ways, and see it for yourself. I started Renegade Tours about 9 years ago, and as the momentum was gaining, the Missouri Historical Society kind of saw this and saw what we were doing. I started talking with them, and we realized that our visions were the same, and that was something that we could do together. Every tour route that we write takes a southern route and a northern route, and we go deep south and far north. And by connecting all of those neighborhoods and those stories, we're able to play out different themes. What's exciting about the History Museum and this thing coming together is that no other history museum is doing this in the country. It's not normal for museums to have programs that get people to not come to the museum. And my program takes people out into the city. So the Eads Bridge is absolutely my very favorite thing in all of St. Louis to talk about. It has drama, it has history, it's got politics, it has bribery, and it has ingenuity. You know, Eads is a guy that comes to St. Louis in the 1830s and builds his whole life around the Mississippi River. And the whole thing gets built because he knows the river all the way down to the bottom. And the elegance of the solution of the trains that go on that second deck and they disappear underneath the city and they reappear, you know, on the other side of downtown. And that's all part of Eads' ingenuity and just amazingness. So now let's time travel though. Let's go somewhere a little more historic. North St. Louis, or Old North as we know it, is actually one of the oldest neighborhoods in the entire city. I mean, it started as its own village, but it's still a community. Even though so many people have come and gone through here, it is definitely a community of people that really love this and make this home. Hi, I'm good. So we have a group of people here. We're just show them what you do. Tell them what you're doing here.
We're a nonprofit letterpress print shop, so we're trying to preserve and conserve old-fashioned equipment as well as the techniques and traditions.
Cool.
Using old wood type and making new prints.
Yeah, and I love getting to show people that people are doing cool new stuff here that's also old stuff in a new neighborhood that's also an old neighborhood. It's all of those things.
And you're welcome
together.
anytime.
Awesome, thank you. We'll see ya. So the tour guides come to us in different ways, and one in particular that's one of my favorites is a guy named Josiah. And when CSTL Tours launched, he went on all of them, and he kept popping up on all of my tours. And I did a virtual tour, and for some reason that night, the other people that had bought tickets didn't show up. It was just me and him for 2 hours talking St. Louis history. And from there, started training him on how to be a great tour guide and how to connect with people.
So right now we're at the intersection of 8th and Market, right next to the Spire headquarters building. In passing today, you would never really think that this whole block used to actually be the center of Chinatown here in the downtown business district of St. Louis. So the first Chinese immigrant that came here to St. Louis was a man named Ali in 1857. Around the late 1860s, many more Chinese immigrants came here to the St. Louis area looking for different kinds of work. And right here at 8th and Market, this really became the center point for the Chinese community.
I love the complexity and the depth of the history. I mean, I came here all the time when I was a kid, heard about St. Louis a million times, but to know that it's such an old city and it had such a big part of American history and the way that history just fans out, that's what I love. And then the stories are just so complex. To be someone who gets to help with that, it's a really special little job I have to help people kind of realize this is a really great city and it has a great history. Complex, but great.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
We are in the Missouri History Museum, located in Forest Park, and we are standing in our small gallery space where we have a show celebrating the life and work of Anna Maria von Pfuhl, Missouri's earliest known woman artist. So Anna Maria's work is a treasure trove of insight into what St. Louis looked like and what the people of St. Louis were like in the early 19th century. Anna Maria came to St. Louis and brought her sketchbooks with her in 1818, and she stayed here for several months. And during her time in St. Louis, she depicted everything she saw. She created beautiful watercolor landscapes of the river, of the indigenous earthworks, of the caves, and she also stopped to sketch the people that she encountered on the streets of St. Louis. So the men and women going about their daily chores, children playing, the domestic scenes that she was in the midst of. And they are very intimate many times. They are images that you just won't find elsewhere of daily life and the happenings that were going on in the early 19th century. If you are interested in the early history of St. Louis and in the life and work of this incredible woman artist, I encourage you to visit the Missouri History Museum to see Painting Creole St. Louis on exhibition through January of 2023. And for more information on this and our other exhibitions and programs, you can visit mohistory.org.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
Washington Avenue in downtown St. Louis, sometimes called the Loft District, used to have an even loftier nickname, Shoe Street, USA. A century ago, Washington Avenue was the center of what today would be called a fashion ecosystem, but back then was simply known as the Garment District.
In the 1920s, there were 121 clothing-related businesses that could be zippers, fabric, buttons, whatever. And then there were over 20 footwear companies in St. Louis, big companies. It literally hummed with activity. You could hear the production, the machines, crowds, carts, all kinds of comings and goings. It was a very, very busy, very alive vibe to it.
At its zenith, St. Louis's Garment District was second in size only to New York.
St. Louis was founded as a fur trading village, and it just developed from there. Washington Avenue at that time had easy access down to the river and down to the levee, and then as trains came, it was just a natural.
Now, St. Louis's fashion heyday is being celebrated in a new book called Ready to Wear, written by Valerie Battle Kinzel, whose own family has ties to the footwear business. And in St. Louis, there was no business like shoe business.
During the height of the shoe industry here in St. Louis, the marketing changed a little bit, where it had been common for people to have a pair of dress shoes and a pair of everyday or place shoes. Suddenly, the marketing switched to, oh, you can have a different pair of shoes to go with this different outfit or this color. And St. Louis was at the right place at the right time for that.
In the early days, the work was steady, but the hours were long, and the pay was terrible. If you were lucky, you made a couple of bucks a week. The employees were often immigrants, or women, or both. And some were their children.
Many of the immigrants had a different idea about a work ethic, and if you were a mouth to feed, then you should be able to earn money to help pay for your food and your clothing.
St. Louis's fashion factories not only made clothing, they also manufactured ideas. The concept of junior-sized dresses was invented in St. Louis. So were harvest hats. And so was a marketing idea that today extends beyond the clothing business.
Does your shoe have a boy inside? Some of the advertising that I grew up with actually started with companies here, like Buster Brown and Red Goose shoes. I, as a child, remember going and getting Red Goose shoes, and there was a goose, and you pulled its neck, and an egg popped out, and you got a prize. That was an incentive, but that was something that was started here.
You can get a free boodle bag with surprises inside.
And you think about it, there's still fast food restaurants that are offering incentives to make children want to have their parents purchase the food. That was the same way for shoes manufactured here in St. Louis.
Profitable military contracts during World War I gave St. Louis's fashion businesses enough cushion to survive the Great Depression all the way up until the next military boom period, World War II. But eventually, world wars and big profits both came to an end. Cheap overseas labor began tearing at the fabric of the American garment industry. Companies like Brown Shoe tried to keep up by opening non-union plants in nearby small towns. For a while, some shoe companies even used prison labor to keep costs down. But by the 1960s, St. Louis's clothing industry started to fold. Today, only a few old-timers are still hanging on. But much like fashion itself, what's old sometimes becomes new again.
We have just as good a chance of any city in the United States to become a fashion capital again.
Susan Sherman is co-founder of the St. Louis Fashion Fund, which is trying to make St. Louis's clothing industry more cutting edge, encouraging young designers and new businesses to stay here or move here. 25% of the proceeds from internet sales of ready-to-wear will be donated to the Fashion Fund.
I'm thrilled about this book. I think that we've waited so long to really tell our story. I mean, we've told it in bits and pieces, media, we've had some national media and everything else, but to have it all in one place is really special. And I think will just be a great branding opportunity for St. Louis, because it's a St. Louis story. It's a great story.
Next week, the piano player behind several well-known names, plus one-of-a-kind wood furniture made from scratch. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.